Hello, and welcome to the Get French Football News Show. I'm Eric Devin, in for Nathan Staples this week, and joining me are guests Mohammed Ali and Philip Bargiel is here as always as well. Before we get to the weekend's action and have a look ahead to the Coupe de France semifinals, here are the weekend's results. On Friday, Marseille played their 8th 0-0 draw of the season away at Nancy, while PSG on Saturday kept the pressure up on Monaco with a 2-0 win against Montpellier, behind goals from Edson Cavani and Angel Di Maria. Bordeaux continued their rise to the table with a 2-0 win against Bastia, with Younous Sankharé notching a goal and an assist as the visitors finished with 10 men. Nantes won away at Caen, Yacine Bamou notching a 2-0 win, and notching a double and a 2-0 win. Dijon kept up the pressure on those above them with a 3-2 win at home to Angers, Lois Dione scoring twice and adding an assist. Lille won 3-0 at home to Guingamp to move to 40 points and just about safety. While Lorient moved out of the relegation zone with a thumping 5-1 win over Metz. Jimmy Cabo, in for the injured Sylvain Marveau, led the way with 2 goals and 2 assists for Les Bleus. On Sunday, Nice's title hopes may have finally disappeared as they could only draw at Toulouse 1-1, while Rennes recorded the same result at Saint-Etienne in a match delayed due to crowd trouble after supporters forced their way into what had been a closed stadium. On Sunday's grand finale saw a rotated Lyon fall 2-1 to Monaco in a nervy encounter for the leaders, who now need just 4 wins from 5 to clinch the title. In Ligue 2, Brest's home loss to Amiens gave Ligue 2 a new leader, as Strasbourg now topped the table, with Lens able to go 3 points clear in third with a win against Le Havre this evening. And that's all the news for now. Do be sure to follow us on Twitter at GFFN, and visit our website at www.getfootballnewsfrance.com to stay up to date on all the latest news and views from around French football. So, Mo, thank you for coming on. Since you are our guest of honor, I did want to briefly address before we get into the show some rumors that have broken via Sky Sports, and that is that Marseille are after Olivier Giroud and Yohan Cabaye. I just wanted to get your take on not necessarily the credibility of those rumors, but in the larger picture, are those the sorts of players that Marseille in this new project should be chasing, or should they be looking at talent that's a little bit younger? Giroud's 31 in the fall. Cabaye, I believe, is a year older than him.
Yeah, so as you said, rumors are rumors. So the credibility of it, I think can still be questioned. But if that's the sort of names that Marseille are looking towards, then it puts a kind of a question mark on the sort of transfer window, sort of the early stages of the project that Frank McCourt and the Marseille management are going for. Giroud, he hasn't had the best season at Arsenal. Playing time has come at a premium, but then again, he is a France international striker. Back home, he is very, very popular. So I kind of see the reasoning to have Olivier Giroud. But then again, you have, he is 31. How many years left are you going to get out of him? And for £20 million of the price sort of being touted, and considering that he will be coming from a top Premier League team, he probably will command the same transfer fee and the same sort of salary structure to Dimitri Payet. And then again, the question you'd have to ask is that wouldn't it be better to get perhaps 2 or 3 players, a little bit untested or have huge potential, or kind of around the 24, 25, 26 age spectrum with the money that you're willing to put forward. But then again, like I said, Giroud is a big name. He is, as it stands, whether you like him or hate him, France's #1 striker in the national team. So it would be sort of a boon for Marseille to get him and sort of the French stamp on the McCourt project as it is. Cabaye would be, I think, much more of a question mark for me. Even though he has kind of laughed it off a little bit in recent weeks of the rumors that he's about to return to France. But in his position, certainly there are a lot of more credible alternatives that would, not just around Europe, in Ligue 1, there are a lot of wonderful midfielders along the lines of Morgan Sanson that you can get a really, really good deal in, and they offer sort of the potential as well. What I don't like to be seeing at this stage is that as Marseille continues to grow, that the club are targeting 29, 30, 31-year-olds, because that kind of sends the wrong message. How long-term is this project?
I think that's the question that I would ask as well. You look at players like Steve Mounier, Riyad Boudebouz, Valentin Rongier, who I think have shown enough over their somewhat brief careers to this point, but to be considered as being ready to take the next step up. Philip, what's your take on this? Are Marseille doing the right thing in terms of presenting themselves as an internationally renowned team in terms of publicity by drawing these names, or should they be paying a little bit more attention to the sustainability of this project?
I'm not quite sure what McCourt is trying to do. Is he trying to get back international players, popular international players, especially regarding Cabaye more than Giroud, to the club, maybe to sell a few shirts, get a few people back in, and say, oh well, these are two guys who played a major World Cup and a major European Championship, and just to get things going, get the popular side of things for McCourt, which is a strategy just like any other strategy. It could work, it could massively backfire as well. But I don't particularly think that these two are the future. I think they will demand much more money that is being touted. I'm not even sure the players do want to return to Ligue 1. I mean, Payet did say he just didn't like the life in London. I've never really heard Giroud or Cabaye say anything like that at all. So I'm of the same opinion as for any other club. There's enough talent in Ligue 1 to keep Marseille's owner very happy. But maybe he doesn't see that. Maybe I'm pretty much convinced he doesn't see that, but I think Marseille's strategy should be to buy the kind of players Morgan Sanson is, and to, I mean, Marseille is still a great pool. It's still the biggest club in the country, and they can create, train young players in and put them in a great position to be at the club, and they can fork out a bit of money now that they have some to get players from other decent academies. I'm thinking about Auxerre, I'm thinking about Le Havre. So I just don't see this as being the right choice, but it is a choice.
That certainly seems to be the consensus there. Just moving on now to this weekend's action. Let's start with yesterday's match. Monaco were facing a Lyon side who has had their number in the recent past, winning earlier this season, and also that 6-1 thrashing towards the end of last season to essentially seal second place. But Lyon, after their 120 minutes against Besiktas on Thursday, had rested several players. The leaders did still manage to make heavy weather of the encounter, though. Lyon dominated large stretches in the second half in particular. And Mo, for you, is this fatigue catching up with Monaco, or should something be said as well for the energetic performance of Lyon's midfield? Luka Toussaint in particular, I think, had a really strong match.
No, absolutely. I definitely think it's fatigue because they are fast approaching 60 games of the season. I'm 100% certain that when they were drawing up plans for this season, they did not expect to be in the business end of all four competitions, or three now, come the end of April. And, the club are rotating as much as they can, but then again, it comes to the, how far do you rotate? The problem with Monaco in 2015 was, do we prioritize sort of getting the Champions League place or going far in the Champions League? And they've done this before as well, way back when they qualified to the Champions League final in 2004. Which sort of competition, which sort of success you want to prioritize? And Jardam's having sort of, he's got his cards, really stacked up high. He needs to, rotate well, but that shouldn't come at the expense of a fantastic title race. In fact, they are sitting top. So, last night they dug deep. They weathered a fantastic and unexpected sort of Lyon surge in the second half to get that win, and that's just credit to the players and just how much they really do want to be champions, but also go really, really far as possible in the Champions League. Because at this stage, you'll just find players that are just too burnt out, and it's the manager's it's the manager's task to really kind of bring out the best, if not physically, because physically they are founded, but to keep them mentally sharp and keep the goals in sight. So it was and from that perspective, looking at that, I think it was a big result, not just on the field for Monaco, but also kind of off it in how they approach the last 5-6 games. It looks like nothing will deter them.
Keeping with Monaco, Philip, switching to Leon. Let's take a look at this. Leon now find themselves in 5th place. Philip, we're yet to factor in Leon's postponed match against Bastia, but should the hosts have opted for a slightly stronger side, given that 5th place, provided they don't win the Europa League, would see them start their season in late July? I think that could be a mitigating factor, given that Leon are certain to have a summer of change with the features of Tolisso and Lacazette, at least yet to be decided.
If I may draw some kind of parallel between again Marseille, they did the same thing back in 2004 when they had this UEFA Cup final against Valencia, which they lost. I think it was 2-0 was the scoreline. Barthez was still playing, and they just said, "Okay, to hell with Ligue 1. We don't really care about the league. We just want to be European champions." And you've had so many. We haven't had I don't think we've even had a French side so far in the competition since 2004. And I think it's pretty clear that Genesio and everybody connected with the club said, okay, this is Monaco. They're high-flying. They've got European football too. But more focus on this Europa League, because it's not that Lyon have nothing to play for, because now they lost their 4th place for the first time in a very, very long time. But if they do win this, they don't just it's not the same as Marseille back in 2004. If they do win this, they get Champions League football, and Champions League football would potentially mean Lacazette and Tolisso staying. It would be a much better pull in that sense than and in another scenario, which is absolutely massive for them, because then they lose these 2 players. Where do they go from there? It's very, very important. So I can really understand Lyon not playing. Well, first of all, Depay playing. I can understand Lacazette not being played because he's injured. Gonalon not playing. Valbuena not playing. I mean, the starting 11 was relatively weak compared to Monaco's, because Monaco's was pretty much their best 11 aside from the fullbacks. So yeah, I get it. I get that from Genesio's point of view. Not sure if you agree, Eric, though.
No, I think that having the Champions League as a potential carrot, I still don't know if that's enough to keep certainly Lacazette and maybe Tolisso, but I think that it certainly does make a strong argument there that looking ahead to those matches, I think Lyon are probably counting on 3 points from the Bastia encounter as well, which would put them back into 4th place. I believe 2 points. They're a point behind Bordeaux right now at this moment, so that would put them back into 4th. Let's take a look back at, speaking of European adventures, let's take a look back at the Champions League and Europa League and get a reaction to the matches and to the draws as well. Mo, come to you looking at Monaco versus Dortmund. It seemed like Dortmund had really got things right in the second half of the first leg of that quarterfinal, playing sort of a 4-1. But how can we defend what Thomas Tuchel did? He dropped Dembele, he dropped Pulisic, who had been both really electric in that second half. He brought in Eric Derm, and we can understand Marco Reus, obviously given his reputation and his experience at this level. But how can we explain this? And I know there are mitigating circumstances with the bombing for Dortmund, but how much of this loss is Monaco's good form, and how much of this loss is poor decisions on the part of Thomas Tuchel?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, discounting sort of the events that happened aside, I was a bit disappointed by how Dortmund approached the second leg, because, like you mentioned, it was a frenetic second half of the first leg the week before last. And so you kind of, what Tuchel needs to do, or needed to do, was kind of set his team up, sort of as a continuation of how they ended the second half. Really frenetic on the wings, a lot of pace to disrupt a makeshift defense and a tired legs. And obviously in this scenario, whereas in the first leg they were chasing sort of the deficit, in this scenario, if they were to get a goal and be positive, it kind of almost counts as double given the away goals rule, kind of eat into the 3 goals that Monaco scored away from home. So, you're looking at Pulisic and you're looking at Dembele to kind of start the game and really kind of rely on them. As well as they did, the week before. So I was kind of a bit dumbfounded by how sort of Dortmund approached this. Obviously, there were more sinister events that happened. The fact that the bus got delayed and the mindset sort of collapsed apparently again, according to the coach. But playing in sort of an awkward, was it 3-4-3, 3-4-2-1 formation, and with Guerrero, as much as I like him, and Durham on the wings, was kind of you really do want those attacking, creative players to kind of run ragged at the Monaco defense, and really kind of match them. The likes of I really do like Monaco's fullbacks. It would have been a really good sight to kind of see against Toure and Mendy, to see Pulisic and Dembele to kind of have a real battle royale, and kind of you never know. I thought if Dortmund had been more prolific and more positive in the early stages, because I think especially considering where the score, what the scoreline was at the beginning of the game, that first 30 minutes would have kind of the way the tie went, because Dortmund were more negative than expected. Monaco, did kind of benefit from that to kind of kill off the tie in the first 20 minutes. But that's not to say Monaco really pounced on Dortmund's negativity. This is like we mentioned, this is a team that really continues to the opportunities afforded to them, and so many players kind of clicking, and the passage of play that are being produced. You can't really. I would say it's more down to Monaco than say Dortmund's misfortune, to answer your question.
All right. But Philip, at this stage of the competition, there are no easy draws, obviously. But how do you think Monaco match up against Juventus? And do you give them any chance of progressing?
It's a worse draw. I honestly don't think so. We weren't. I'm not going to say I was completely optimistic when Monaco would won against Manchester City or Borussia Dortmund, but to me, Juventus showed what a big club they are by knocking out Barcelona 3-0 on aggregate. Again, the parallel has to be made with PSG, where Juventus went to the Nou Camp, but didn't matter. They had an amazing defense, an amazing goalkeeper, a great squad really, and just shows their mentality, their resilience. They're ahead in Serie A. I think the title is pretty much soon up for them. So that's a plus for them, because they've got nothing else going for them. And they beat the side that beat them in the final 2 or 3 years ago. So I just not overly optimistic in that sense. I think that Jardim will need to be much more tactically astute than he was against Manchester City or Dortmund. Even though against Dortmund he had some, at the very, very start of the game, I tweeted about Mbappe playing a bit lower than Falcao, but that didn't last for a very, very long time. And Monaco saw that Dortmund's 3-4-2-1 was very much adaptable to how they played themselves. And they basically had a field day, especially in the first half. I just can't see this happening against Juventus. I see a very close game, a very closed game as well. Goalkeeper is not as easy to beat as Raul Bravo or Roman Bürki. Let's face it, Buffon is still up there with one of the best goalkeepers in the world. The defenders are extremely talented. Again, one of the best in the world. Up front is Dybala is pretty decent, and I'm just waiting on Jardim to adapt his tactics to the opposition, which he will need to. Otherwise, Monaco, first of all, I don't think they're going to score a lot of goals, and second, they're going to concede a lot. Yeah, so that's what's
Also, would you say would you say that because if you've looked at Monaco, kind of the last. What I've noticed, especially since the beginning of April, was that around about the 65, 70 minutes mark, they do drop off in terms of physical intensity. And that's just one thing that won't wash with Juventus. They really do keep going for the full 90 minutes against Barcelona. Again, in Serie A as well, they do really just close out matches and grind out sort of the opposition. And with Monaco, every single game since, I think since the top of the month in the Coupe de la Ligue final, they've just really stepped off the gas. And that could be another thing, another issue with fatigue and tiredness, and maybe that might be the deciding factor if it is especially a close game.
Well, the thing is, It's been a long season for Monaco. I mean, they've been up to the final of the Coupe de la Ligue. They're in the semi-final against the Coupe de France. It's on Wednesday at the Parc des Princes. They have played the first as a group stage of the Champions League. They've knocked out two sides, and they're playing a very physical formation. So of course it's starting to take its toll, and I'm actually surprised it's taking its toll so late in the season, because there's 7 games to go. How much is it?
They have 5 league matches.
4 games to go, and Monaco has 5 with that game in hand. So yeah, I'm quite surprised, and still kudos to them, because I do believe Monaco are going to win the title. I believe that Lyon match last night was the most difficult on paper, and that it will basically Monaco will win their game in hand and probably win the league before the very last day. So yeah, it's not entirely surprising, but again, it doesn't have to be like that. Jardim can go back to being a defensive coach, which he was last season. He's fully capable of doing that. It's really not that hard, putting players behind the ball. But does he adapt his tactics to Prandelli's? I just can't see it, because he didn't adapt it to Guardiola's, and Guardiola's not a bad manager, even though results, he's not having a good season at all, as it is turning out. Yeah. Pessimistic.
Moving on now to speak about Lyon. Mo, is Lyon's progress in the Europa League the result of a weak draw, or beating Roma and now Besiktas? Have they validated themselves as a European level team again after a rather embarrassing last 2 seasons in Europe? Last year's finishing bottom in the Champions League group stage, and then before that, playoff elimination in the Europa League.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think Lyon have kind of done away with the reputation that they had in the last, I'd say, up to 3 seasons. They haven't really had a tough draw in Europe, or a very, very tough draw, to kind of warrant the performances they've given in both the Champions League and Europa League. But this season, going straight from the Champions League group stage, they fared really well against Juventus and Sevilla. One big European powerhouse, the other a really dangerous European team full of a winning mentality. The Europa League holders, and then coming into this tournament, AZ Alkmaar was probably the only team aside from Dinamo Zagreb that they faced, and Lyon rightfully washed the floor with them. And against the 2 difficult teams, they've really, really shown kind of their mettle and their worth, especially when the going has got tough. I honestly thought that against Roma, they would have suffered in the second leg, but they managed to hold on. And Besiktas away, for kind of a difficult, hostile environment in Istanbul, is difficult for any team, let alone Lyon. And they've managed to kind of come through that. I said at the time, if they won, I managed to survive Besiktas, I put them as favourites for the Europa League trophy, because you do look at Man United, and even though on paper they do have the best, obviously by far the best team, the best players, etc., but they found it really, really difficult to convincingly overcome average opposition. You look at the likes of Rostov and Anderlecht recently in the knockout stages, whereas Lyon have swatted away 2 bona fide European giants, and they're going to be facing a third one as well, whereas Man United go to Celta Vigo. And for me, just that combination, that continuation really puts them as favourites. And, it goes to show kind of just how seriously they've also taken it this season, because not many Ligue 1 teams, particularly in the Europa League, take the competition seriously and devote their resources to it. But credit to Lyon for doing so.
Yeah, absolutely. Philip, what about you? How do you see Lyon matching up against a very young Ajax side? Are they the favorites for you? Is this a favorable draw? Obviously, avoiding United, there's something to be said there, but...
Yeah. No, I'm much more optimistic for Lyon than I am for Monaco. I think. Well, I haven't. I don't watch the Eredivisie every weekend, but we can see this type of club being more often than not pillaged by the big clubs each time. There's a bright kid coming through the ranks, and they come. Quite often, I would think hasn't been much of the case in the past few years. But anyway, yeah, Lyon must be favourites for that one. Hopefully, Lacazette gets to play. I'm not sure until when he's out. But it's a great draw, and it's a great thing to have avoided Manchester United. Because that would mean Manchester United, if they do beat Celta Vigo, that would be a great final to watch. That would be great on paper. I believe it would be great on the pitch as well. Can happen in 90 minutes. The worry is that Lyon mustn't feel okay. We're going to beat this guy. These guys, we know not. We're going to focus on the big one in Stockholm against Manchester United. Just like Manchester United shouldn't have that kind of attitude, which, to be honest, in France has the case. Every by the time the draw was made, it was like, okay, so it's going to be a Lyon Manchester United. Let's play the semi-finals and see how it goes. And I believe that Lyon all taken away by something like that they have this favourite tag, and that they'll probably be surprised by the quality of Ajax or not. But I'm a bit afraid that they have too much of a favourite tag for this one. And that's, that worries me a bit.
All right. So turning.
I'm not sure how the perception is, but it is that kind of, it is that kind of talk since the draw. So I'm not sure how optimistic or how much you agree with me, Eric, but that's just, how it feels in France anyway.
I'm cautiously optimistic. I don't know that Lyon has struggled at times defensively this season, and I don't know that given Ajax's ability to score, that Lyon shouldn't be worried. I do make Lyon favorites if I were put to the test on it, but I'm worried. I think I'm approaching this tie as a fan similar to how I would have approached the Besiktas tie. I was not confident of Lyon's progression, but I was optimistic.
And you'd be disappointed if you got knocked out, obviously.
Of course, at this stage, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but I mean, given that on paper the Lyon do look superior, that would be even more, especially in the semis, yeah. Yeah,
I think certainly. So, turning our attention now to Ligue 1, I wanted to ask you a broader question, Mo. We've seen Lorient and Dijon record impressive wins this weekend, playing a more open style than we're often used to see teams in the bottom half of the table in France play.
Yeah.
Nantes rise up the table has been guided by similar principles since Conceição took over. And we've also seen more defensively oriented sides like Rennes and Saint-Etienne take a little bit of a step back this season. Do you see this as being part of a sea change in Ligue 1? It's been somewhat dogged by reputation for negativity, or is this just a sort of a happy coincidence in terms of the managerial changes that these clubs have undergone recently?
I wouldn't say it's a complete sea change yet. I think it hopefully does go into that direction. We've in Ligue 1 we do have some teams that do choose to play football at the weekend. Choose to play some decent attacking football to try and get a positive result and not kind of frightened. Just be frightened and kind of hold on to a draw by playing stale, dogged football, which obviously Ligue 1 has been renowned for in the past years. But I think in this scenario, when you look at Lorient and Dijon, I think just kind of it's sort of last chance saloon, and that's why they are now coming out and trying to really, really open through, and that's really down to the managers. One thing I've been really, really impressed by Lorient of late, not just because of their record, but just sort of the kind of the goals they're scoring, kind of how well the front four are clicking. Because if you do look back to about 5-6 weeks ago, they were absolutely dreadful. Even when Bernard Cassoni came in, he did struggle to kind of set the team up really well. But he by mixing kind of a 4-4-2 and the traditional kind of three players forward, he's really kind of Lorient, sort of the best of the players, such the early Mukanja and Waris, but also Jimmy Cabo, who's been doing really, really well recently, and that he's been rewarded with that by a couple of very, very big results to drag them away from the bottom. With Dijon, I kind of felt like they were always like that. They were always a very stubborn team to play, and it's again a good coincidence to see that certain players in the team are clicking out at the right moment. But again, that's down to the fact that they've only got 4 or 5 games left to really solidify their future. Why hasn't this been the case over a 38-game season? If we do manage to see that, then we can kind of talk about the whole general style of playing Ligue 1 going in the right direction.
Yeah, I certainly think we'd seen a fair amount of positivity in trying to play forward from Dijon at most points in the season, especially compared to the other teams that were promoted in terms of Metz and Nancy. Dijon have always been attractive to watch for me, but I think that it's probably a little of column A, a little of column B in terms of that there is more positivity, but it's also a positivity born out of desperation, I think, for a lot of these teams down the bottom. So switching gears just a little bit before we finish our Ligue 1 discussion, I did want to look ahead to the Coupe de France. Semifinals this week, tomorrow and Wednesday. Leonardo Jardim has come out and said that he will play a rotated side in Monaco's match against Paris Saint-Germain. The defending champions will be missing Javier Pastore, as well as potentially Adrien Rabiot and Leben Kurzawa. Philip, should we expect a little bit of rotation for PSG as well, given that they have Nice at the weekend? Or do you look at Unai Emery as fielding a full-strength side, given how important another trophy could be to potentially saving his job?
I'm not quite sure what I would do if I were Unai Emery, because yes, the game at Nice is extremely, really, really important for PSG. It's the last big match, very tricky game against a team that is third. And on the other hand, you've got this semi-final, who is we say in France, a finale avant l'heure, a final before being time for the final. And I do believe that most people will say that this is basically a rematch of the Coupe de la Ligue, except that Fabinho's playing, and that this is another chance of PSG to beat a Monaco side. Then again, if PSG do win, they'll say, oh, but they were playing at home, and Monaco were missing a couple of players, and they're playing a second string side, blah blah blah. So I would actually field a full strength side for that one as well. Give Unai's so that Unai gives himself as much chance as possible of a second trophy, because once again I just don't see them. First of all, I don't see them winning at Nice, and I just don't see Monaco dropping any more points. I think they'll have their games wrapped up quite early, before the 70th minute, before they drop down physically. So I believe it'll be quite full strength from PSG, aside from Pastore, obviously, who's injured, and quite rotated for Monaco. I think it's much more important to win the league from a historical standpoint for Monaco, and to be as prepared as you can be against Juventus, because this is a French club in the semi-finals of the Champions League. It hasn't happened since 2010. Lyon, was it? I think it was. Mm-hmm. It's just massive, and one Coupe de France. I mean, there's always next season. you know what I mean? It's not that. I can understand how it's not that big for Jardim.
Mo, turning our attention to the other semi-final, could you see one of Angers or Guingamp causing a shock in the final? Assuming PSG progress, who of those makes a more awkward opponent? We have seen that both of them have taken points from PSG this season. Guingamp winning at home, and I believe Angers getting a draw.
I'd say, I think Guingamp are always a very, very tricky opponent, and the fact that they do have some sort of Coupe de France pedigree, and I think much more of a better record against the top sides. I think Angers, they are a difficult outfit to play at home, but this would be in the national stadium and under the bright lights of the Coupe de France final. So I would expect them to really make any sort of dent if they were to face Paris Saint-Germain or even Monaco in the final. But Gangon, Antoine Kounbari, decent pedigree in terms of the big matches. Gangon, won the French Cup twice. And they're just generally a very, very tricky opponent to play. Very unpredictable, kind of how they set up, especially this season. They both home and away against sort of more esteemed opponents. That's when they do really come out to play and kind of make an impact. So generally, I'd say they have more of a chance. But obviously, again, looking at tomorrow's semi-final, not tomorrow, sorry, but Wednesday, any company in that semi-final could go through. It literally is 50-50. I just can't pick a favorite from that because it's an unpredictable tie. But if Gangon were to go through, I'd put them, not totally out of winning the trophy against Monaco PSG, really.
All right. I would tend to have to agree there. I think that Adam and I had spoken about this the other week speaking about Angers and that they've been a little bit unlucky in recent matches. I think the loss to Monaco, and they showed some good spirit against PSG as well. I think on form, Angers would, for me, be a more difficult opponent. I think that we've seen their threat from set pieces. They've got those players back from Cup of Nations as well, Karl Toko Ekambi, from Diadou. They've had some good performances as well from Jonathan Bamba, who's been on loan from Saint-Etienne. Even against Dijon, a match they had nothing to play for, it was impressive to see them fight back and make that match 3-2. And I think it's a little bit nervy for Dijon. Of course, they've got Sheikh Ndoye. He's such a good weapon from set pieces. Those defenders as well, Thomas and Traore, have been solid. Still some questions at fullback and in terms of consistency from those forwards, but in a final, they're going to be dangerous. And Angers have been a tough proposition in the cups all season. So I shade Angers as being a more potentially dangerous opponent, but in terms of styles, and that's another problem as well. I think that how they match up against Guingamp is a little bit more problematic as well. I think Guingamp had rotated to a much higher degree at the weekend, I think are really targeting this match, whereas Angers played a fairly full-strength side against Dijon and perhaps won't be as focused on this match. Maybe they feel they're not quite safe. I'm not sure what the thinking there is from Stéphane Moulin, but I would look at Angers as being a more dangerous proposition. Philip, turning to some events yesterday, we saw some rather interesting matters at Saint-Etienne this weekend, where a group of fans entered the stadium and a match that had been supposedly set to be played behind closed doors as a means of protest against the league. They soon left. There wasn't any violence or anything. They said they didn't want to create trouble, but merely send a message to the league. Can you see their logic, or was this a foolish move on their part, given Saint-Etienne have already been under fire a couple times this season?
Well, given the ultra mentality, what it basically is that every time a club does get punished for whatever it is, well, obviously I'm not talking about Bastia here. I'm talking about a club with more reasonable fans, a club that does not, attack players doing pre-match training. Is basically what happens, I believe, in Germany, where you see insults being aimed at the authorities. So in France, it's the LFP, Ligue de Football Professionnel, and each time there's a huis clos, so a game closed, played behind closed doors. There's this kind of reaction. There couldn't really be any violence yesterday because there was nobody there. I mean, they didn't want to do anything to the players or anything like that. They just basically, I don't really get that. I don't really get what they were trying to show, because it was a game played behind closed doors for a reason, and them entering the stadium without permission just will not help. I think a lot of things need to be done by the LFP to have better communication with the ultras, so that there's more peace. I mean, they don't have it in England. They have they have some at Crystal Palace. They have it in Germany, and in Germany the role is extremely clear. The role is that they provide the atmosphere to the stadium, and let the families, enjoy the game. There's a bit more aggression to this part of football in France, and it just doesn't seem to be improving, especially this season. I can't really seem to remember, especially since the days of the Boulogne boys and Supra at PSG, a season marred by so much crowd trouble. You had Caen, who had a complete dialogue with players after a defeat early on in the season. You had Bastia. You have crowd trouble at Lyon versus Besiktas. I mean, so many incidents this season. Something needs to be done. I do believe maybe it's because of the country being on alert on terrorist attacks every day. That maybe the games are less well policed. But it's a shame.
Yeah, Mo, I want to throw this to you as well. Do you think that there's something else going on here in terms of the Saint-Étienne's hierarchy? Do we really believe that security is that poor that these fans could force their way in, or is Romayer, the president, being honest and saying that the usual necessary protections were taken?
I'd like to think that there was nothing untoward, because obviously Saint-Étienne would face kind of more of a penalty from the LFP, but I think the necessary protection, the necessary sort of security wasn't really undertaken, just because of the fact that it was a game behind closed doors. How much security would you require? But I think, just to mention a point that Phil mentioned earlier, I think the reason why sort of Saint-Étienne's ultras wanted to prove a point by entering this match yesterday, and the fact that there's in the past couple of weeks there have been so many incidents, not just in France but also European matches in France, of sort of crowd trouble and crowd angst. It's because the fans' just general displeasure at the way the LFP are really impacting fans. Part of it is to do with the state of emergency that is encapsulated in France at the moment, but you get so many away fans that are just simply barred. Just in midweek, a notice is sent out on the LFP's website saying, the visiting fans of Club A is not allowed to go to this match for no reason at all. And, they will just put, okay, it's just a state of emergency. There's nothing we can do. And, I really saw this at the Velodrome last week with that huge sort of rude banner towards the LFP, simply because the Saint-Étienne fans were barred from attending the match. For what reason? Nobody knows. 1,000 Marseille fans went to the return game. In November, and that passed out into the Marseille and Saint-Étienne do share historical rivalry, but on a personal level, they are more or less there's no sort of bad blood between them. So it was just surprising, and on top of that, then you have the LFP banning Saint-Étienne for the rain game because of what happened in the derby against Lyon. So all of that just kind of just builds up, and you just have that anger. I don't think that Saint-Étienne themselves condoned kind of what happened, but I can't really blame the fans, considering how much the LFP had just simply, without any reason, it might have to do with police resources. It might be the correct thing to do, but they haven't really communicated that well. And now you're just seeing most clubs, not just in Ligue 1, but also in Ligue 2 and below, just having their away support just being eroded by nonchalant messages saying that away fans cannot go.
I wanted to ask you both then as well. Do we think that some of the frustration is centered around the timeliness of the LFP's decisions? I mean, for me, if I were a fan, to see, the derby between Lyon and Saint-Étienne, what was that? Early February, okay. So we're seeing this decision come down more than 2 months later. I know I understand the LFP wanted to have caution in terms of having evidence, but in today's world of digital video, given that matches are played on a Sunday or a Monday in the case of Ligue 2, and that the LFP convenes on Thursday evening, do we not think that's enough time to gather evidence? Do we think also that frustration on the part of the fans is the fact that oftentimes there is such a long time between events and the sanctions related to them?
I think most of the frustration is that, as you said, the LFP is taking a very, very long time to make their decision and taking the harsher route and taking maybe the easy way out. I think a lot of the frustration is a bit like when PSG fans were allowed to go down to Marseille. There isn't any enough police personnel to police a game, and that every time the LF decision to make to just take the harsh option and say, okay, no fans, which is a bit stupid because there aren't that many people who go to games in France without LFP, forbidding people from attending. And this is, I believe this is a very much a growing frustration from the ultras towards the authority, towards LFP, saying that France is not correctly run on this standpoint, and that the LFP is not having enough communication with the clubs, and that the clubs themselves are not having enough communication with the ultras. And we talking about 3 clubs there, because PSG basically have no ultras. They let a couple of them back this season to get a bit of that. But I'm really talking about Saint-Etienne, Marseille, and Lyon. I mean, there's not much. There are a few ultras at Bordeaux, but that's that's just not a lot.
Well, I think fans might have something to say, Tribune Noir, about that.
Again, it's nothing. It's nothing personal against Nantes. It's just a numbers question. I mean, Nantes do have also they kind of protest, but it just can't really compare. I'm really talking about the big 3 there, and how they're just frustrated at how little fun they can have, and every time they have it, they're just being completely unreasonable with it.
Well, I wanted to ask as well, Mo. The match itself, Saint-Etienne went back to what looked more like a 4-3-3 than the 4-2-3-1 they've tried in recent weeks. And with Marseille having drawn on Friday, a win here really could have got Saint-Etienne back into the race for Europe. I know that game in hands against Monaco, but still a chance. Is Europe gone now for Liver?
Yeah, unfortunately to say, it's definitely, I think, beyond doubt that they will not get European football next season. Yeah, you do mention that the game in hand is away to Monaco, which for let's say for all intents and purposes that will very likely not end in 3 points. But also kind of just it's typical Saint-Etienne this season. They get into a good position, they don't really capitalize on it. Rennes haven't been that great in recent times, so this was a match for the taking. And they're also, Christophe Gaultier is just, like you mentioned earlier in your Guardian article, which I very much agreed with. I think that's just sort of the end of the road. This is just how far Saint-Etienne can go, really. They just become tepid and turgid, and just, you'd expect that this season where, okay, they suffered a drubbing to Marseille, which psychologically will have an impact in sort of this race, but they'll make a real impact. But just the whole game itself was just sort of really, really not that much of a spectacle. And Christophe Gaultier is not only, he's not only having sort of focus on his team's ills and weaknesses, but also the players. He's already cleared out 3 decent names from the squad for not being, for not really given 100% in the club's sort of affairs and basically their jobs. So there's just a lot of sort of issues at Saint-Etienne around, and I think they're really operating as, as unfortunate as for it to say, it's not really, this is at full capacity. And for that reason, I think that the Europa League now is surely done and dusted. Not that Marseille have got an easy run of it all, but 6th is about the lowest that Marseille can go. They do have probably 1 or 2, games left. I think if Marseille do win any one of the remaining last 4 games, that would definitely seal it.
Yeah, the players that Mo's referring there are Brian Dabo, Nolan Roux, and the third, Osama Tanan. Yeah. Both of whom, all 3 of whom I think have absolutely disappointed this season. I know that Roux and Dabo aren't not necessarily electric, and Tanan's struggle with injury, but I think that it would not be unfair to have expected more out of all three of those players ahead of the season, particularly given that Dabo is expected to play more of an attacking role. But he's not even been in the 18, even prior to this exclusion from the first team squad a lot of weeks. And it's really been just a difficult season for him since his move from Montpellier. Finally, go ahead, Philip, sorry.
I think it's pretty clear now. Saint-Etienne, I've said it many times this season that I don't really especially want to see them back in the Europa League, give playing, and how often we've seen them in the Europa League. But it does look like Bordeaux, Marseille, and Lyon are going to be playing in the Europa League, and fingers crossed maybe Lyon will be playing in the Champions League. But Mo, are Marseille ready for Europa League next season? I know that there's a big summer to come, but is it almost too soon and not to have to already have European Thursday, or quite a lot of Thursdays in the first half of next season, where you have a lot of new players, new organization, everything. And I do believe that a little cozy mid-table finish and have a nice. So no games every 2 weeks would do the club actually a lot of good. Do you agree?
Oh well, I agree. There are sort of issues to look at ahead of next season, because that Thursday-Sunday sort of match schedule has really impacted not just teams in Ligue 1, but a lot of teams in Europe. We've seen that Ajax have sort of thrown away their title hopes because of that sort of 3-day gap playing on a Sunday every week. It all depends on kind of just how much sort of how wide this summer's transfer window will go. If Marseille not only do need to focus on quality but also quantity. We played in the Europa League, it was last season, it's the beginning of last season, and that already had an impact. Not only were Marseille pretty much average in the Europa League group stage, playing against some really unheralded opposition, but the following Sunday, back in Ligue 1, I think they've only won 1 or 2 games out of the 6 immediately following a European tie. And much of that is only because because of the really thin squad at the time, you don't have much to work with, and that's been the same in the Champions League 2013-14 as well. So what Marseille's been lacking for the last 2-3 seasons now is having not a squad of 18, because 18 is too thin a squad. You really like the big European teams, like Paris Saint-Germain last season, not so much this season, have a squad of 23 to pick from. You have your 18, your match day 18 and 5 that you can rotate. Obviously, no one's saying that every player of the 23 has to be a bona fide starter. So I think Marseille would do well to hold on some of the fringe players from this season, like Bouna Sarr, etc., because this might actually work out well if they were to go in Europa League campaigns, particularly if they do finish 6th and have to start in July, when half of the players are on holiday. Some of the incoming players haven't really gone through pre-season yet in the new colours. Keeping hold of the fringe players. You've got a lot of Marseille really actually don't even need to buy sort of these fringe players. You've got Lucas Ocampos who may be coming back in the summer. You have a couple of really good young defenders in the form of Stéphane Speragna and Baptiste Allo. And these players can form sort of part of the fringe, and it might really, really help in Europa League next season. But I think, to answer your question, I think they do necessarily have the tools to operate, but kind of how well do they use those tools?
Yeah, I think it is important. I would say as well that Europa League can be a carrot to dangle in terms of getting some of these bigger name players, maybe not necessarily a Cabaye or a Giroud, but if we look at an internal transfer from other teams in Ligue 1 to offer European football in what looks to be a consistent basis going forward, whether that is the Europa League or the Champions League, I think that's a really important thing to offer, to be able to say, look, you're taking with us a definitive step up, even if you're not going to be able to have a ton of playing time. I mean, I think we look at some of the transfers that Marseille have had, the fees paid, I'm sure wages factor into this as well, but some of the fees that Marseille have paid have been, for me, surprisingly low. but I think that the player might be more willing to make those moves work, given what's on offer at Marseille. I think about the fees that the team paid for the likes of, Sanson and Georges-Kevin Nkoudou in particular. Those two both seemed to be at a bargain price for me in the recent past. That Marseille did really well to bring those players in for, I think it was $9 million for Sanson and $1 million for Nkoudou. Finishing now, though, with another team that is set to be playing European football next season. That would be Nice. They could only, unfortunately, draw at Toulouse. And even though they face PSG this weekend, they're 6 points off of second place. That's probably the end of them hoping to catch one of those top two for the season. Philip, what does this team need to do this summer to make itself better equipped for the Champions League? You've got Younes Belhanda and Ricardo Pereira on loan. Willian Cypria and Alassane Player coming back from big injuries. How does this team structure things? Should they keep Mario Balotelli?
I think some variants of this question last week, and it was very hard to answer. Everything will be key. The thing that will be key is don't sell all your best players. Obvious thing to say, but try and keep most of the youth academy at the club, because it's going to be extremely tough. We saw that Favre made a choice. We saw that he made a choice at the beginning of the season, or rather midway through. I would say midway through the Europa League group stage, where he said, "Okay, we've got Schalke, we've got Salzburg, and it's not worth it. It's just not worth it continuing in the Europa League, and we want Champions League football." I honestly don't see French football followers saying Nice are finishing third and they're going to do a great thing in the Champions League. They're going to go very, very far indeed. I think that people are very hopeful as their playoff. So they won't do that the group stage, but really it's of European football, of big games in Europe. Ultimately, I just don't think it will end in a success, and not necessarily be completely like Montpellier were back in 2011, but if they don't lose, let's just say, okay, Thierry, Cyprien, Plea, Walter, or even Malang Sarr, I'm saying they can do something good. But you've got so much pressure because you've got pre-season training, you've got Ligue, you've got a Coupe de Ligue that's starting quite soon in France, and you've got the Champions League. It's extremely difficult for a club that is not accustomed to playing in Europe. I'm talking about the Europa League here. I'm not even talking about the Champions League. To suddenly transform itself into a very organized unit that can take in 2 big games a week. There are very few clubs in France who are able to do that. A couple of seasons ago, nobody was able to do that. So yeah, good luck, Nice.
All right, what about you, Mo? Briefly, are there any specific things you feel like need you address in the summer window? Should they make an effort to keep Pereira, keep Belhanda? I believe Belhanda's clause is €9 million to make his deal permanent.
No, they really should. They really should kind of hang on to, many of the players that have kind of propelled them to this position in Ligue 1. Like Phil said, it is going to be a grueling start of the season for Nice, and history kind of shows that teams are really not accustomed to these sort of situations to kind of drop off next season. Don't even finish maybe in the top 6, kind of drop off to mid-table. You have to look at Leicester, for example, from last year in the Premier League to this, and Montpellier as well, back in 2012-13. So they really do need to address sort of buying not only players that can handle, the big names relative to obviously the club size, to help them on the Champions League journey, but also players that will not replace the likes of Seri if he is to go, and Alassane Player, but players that can that they can rotate well with. And again, they would have to, like we said with Marseille, look to the Ligue 1 market to kind of buy up those bargains. You know, you mentioned a couple of players like Valentin Rongier, like Dione at Dijon, that would be very, very cheap and would obviously jump at the chance to play Champions League qualifiers. And also the caveat would be that, okay, if they do have a different starting 11 for the Champions League, they've got ready-made Ligue 1 replacements. These are the sort of kind of markers they need to look into. And I really do think that needs to kind of go for a double-pronged approach. Look for the players that will help you in the Champions League that do come from maybe the established European sides. You know, like Shakhtar Donetsk, Dynamo Kiev again, where they got Belhanda would be a good place to look. But look towards the Ligue 1 market where they can kind of solidify and their top 3, top 4 ranking over those 2 seasons. Because what the worst thing at this stage would be after a really good 2 years and that Chinese money coming in, where they kind of squander it away and kind of tail away to 10th or 11th next season.
Yeah, I think that's well said, Mo, without addressing too much specific targets, but definitely looking to bring in another striker. I think another midfielder would make things a little bit smoother as they wait for Lex Cyprian and Playa to come back from very serious injuries. I think that we've seen in recent weeks that Libian himself is still recovering from injury, but he and Balotelli can't necessarily be relied upon, especially if European competition is in the mix as well.
Absolutely.
Thanks. That's all for this week. My thanks again to Mo for joining us, especially on late notice. You can follow him on Twitter at Mohammed Ali, _93, to keep up with all of his work. For Philip Bargiel, I've been Eric Devin. Do join us on Thursday from 10 o'clock UK. We're going to have a bumper combination preview show and Ligue 2 special. We haven't really addressed Ligue 2 all that much this season, but there's certainly some interesting storylines there, the likes of Strasbourg, Amiens, and Nîmes being potential promotion candidates coming back up from the National in recent years. That we are going to have on 3 guests, Steve West, Max Quelch-Wools, and Will Gain. Will be joining myself and Adam. Until then, you can follow us on Twitter at GFFN and visit our website at www.getfootballnewsfrance.com and follow our Match Zone Twitter account as well for coverage of the Coupe de France semifinals. Thank you very much and have a great week.